welcome to Artist Alchemy. I'm John Cruz. I'm a portrait photographer based in Philadelphia in the US.
Hi, I'm Steph. I'm a fantasy photographer based in Lincoln in the UK.
And today our guest is Emily Rogers, who is an artist based here in the Philadelphia area. Emily, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
So Emily, this whole podcast and everything is really just getting into the minds of creators. So let me hear your story arc from artists. What was the Picasso line? All children are artists, and then some people grow up. It's like you fall out of that. Everybody's creative when they're a kid, but there's always a certain number of people who take it over to the Rubicon of being a professional. So kind of what was your story when you decide, oh, I'm going to do this professionally and I'm going to focus on it?
Yeah, that's so funny that you bring up, children, because my mom always makes the joke that I was born with a crayon in my hand, because I guess I just came out creative. So I think being an artist has always been an innate part of who I am. And I actually have a personal belief that being an artist is not even so much about what you make, but it's more about who you are. And I think that if you're an artist, it's part of your being, and you can't help but create. And now in this day and age, there's so many ways to create different things. So yeah, I've always been artistic. I was really lucky to have support from my parents and family growing up, who put me in art classes and helped me get education outside of the public school system, and just to foster my creative spirit and skills and kind of natural talents. And then I did end up going to art school to get a BFA in university. So I received that, and I got my BFA in printmaking, actually, because I decided I wanted to do something to challenge myself outside of drawing and painting, because I already had a good amount of experience in that area and was, already, talented, educated in, drawing and painting. So I pushed myself and did printmaking to learn, and kind of focus for those few years on a totally different medium, which has, I think, lent to my creative process now, because it's a much more of a process-based, medium and creative outlet. So after I graduated, I moved out to Philadelphia. I knew I wanted to go to a big city with a, thriving art community. But as much as I love New York, I just could not live in the concrete jungle. I'm a Michigan girl originally. So I need some nature. I need to have a car. I just needed, a city that was big, but also not like New York big or LA big. So I love Philly, especially, and the reason I picked it was because of our thriving art community. We have such an amazing creative community here in Philly. So it just felt like a perfect fit. And shortly after moving out here, I took a full-time job, like most graduates do. It was at a photography production company, actually. And I was doing creative work there. And basically, that was just not for me. Working full-time I realized, I was like, why am I working so hard for someone else's dream? Because it was a smaller business, and I knew my boss, and this was his dream. And I was like, why am I working so hard for someone else's dream when I have my own dreams? And so I was there for about 10 months and then left to go pursue being a creative entrepreneur, a professional artist on my own. And that's what I've been doing ever since 2016.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And when you say, is it, do you sell your prints? Do you do
Oh, yeah.
tutoring? How have you kind of pursued that? What different avenues?
Yeah, so I consider myself a fine artist and muralist. I've been doing murals. I think I did my first mural in 2018. But I primarily am a painter, though I consider myself mixed media, because though I don't typically identify that way because mixed media is a very broad term. And my work is more two-dimensional in nature. So it's mostly drawing and painting, mostly painting. But I do incorporate fine embellishments such as gold leaf, silver leaf, Swarovski crystals.
I was going to ask, because I've seen like seeing some of your work, you play with those layers with the gold leaf. And does that go back to your print background? And like, okay,
Yes.
like I'm gonna
Yes, so-
create a layer of this, you know, even though it's still 2-dimension, you're creating depth with using the different material.
Absolutely, exactly. So I kind of put the cart before the horse there, but yes, so like going back to, you know, my kind of academic like education, I kind of pull from a lot of areas that I've learned from, like, you know, in my past education system, you know, the systems and stuff, but then I also get really experimental with it. And so I do embellish my stuff. And I actually am, I believe, the only artist in Philly, muralist in Philly, who does gold leaf or silver leaf murals. So
That's very cool.
I incorporate it into my murals as well. At this point, only my indoor murals, but you know, just for safety and protection of the leaf. But yeah, it's a really amazing process that I personally love, and I love just giving that extra oomph to my work. I just, it's so funny because when I started working with it, it was shortly after I decided to go out and you know, focus on being a professional artist. And it was probably less than a year later that I started experimenting with gold leaf and just fell in love with it. And then that has led me to experiment with other embellishments as well. And I almost just feel like if I don't have a piece that has that a part of it, it's just not me.
It's like your signature.
Yes, yeah, it's honestly, it's kind of like what I'm becoming known for. It's part of my style. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's funny because when I went out to start my career as a professional artist, I really did not have a style. And I struggled with that for, I would say, a couple of years, you know, really trying to find my signature style and like what made me unique, what made me stand out. And, you know, learning about these other processes that kind of, although very different than my printmaking background, it was process based and it made sense to me. And it kind of, you know, was mixed media, it was layers, it was all of that. And so, you know, when I finally came across it, I was like, I really dove deep into it. And I think over time I've, you know, kind of found my style now.
Now
Which is
for
awesome.
outdoor, like I understand like gold leaf, like in the elements, you know, or I guess you'd have to either figure out a way to seal it in some
Yeah.
way that would be safe. Have you thought about like taking the thought process and doing like, I don't know, I was thinking like, what if you were to do like a different material to mimic the layering, but in a different way? Like, have you started to like play with the idea of like, okay, this piece deserves gold leaf here. Gold leaf will yeah, the rain, the cold, everything else will destroy it. But what if I were to do a different material here? And then I start to think about like, if you start to play with like outdoor, or do you just love the material itself that you're playing with?
Yeah, no, I have, because there's actually another muralist in Philadelphia who's very well known. You know him, Aloysius McElwain, one of my very close friends.
Yep.
He he's like the mural king. He's been doing so many murals. I think he has like over 200 in the city alone. So he suggested to me a few years ago when we were doing a mural festival. I really wanted to do gold for this piece, but it was outdoors. And he, being the all-star who knows all this, you know, proper spray paints and everything, suggested I use a Montana Gold metallic gold spray paint that actually is extremely metallic and shiny. It's not as metallic and shiny as gold leaf because you'll never be able to get any paint that is going to replicate actual thin sheets of metal itself. But it was extremely shiny and it did work. And I think over time, the elements did wear it away a bit because that's going to be inevitable. But it really worked out super well. And so I do incorporate gold into my outdoor murals when possible or when makes sense, or, you know, it really just depends on the project, the client, etc.
And you could like as far as like the weathering, you could almost plan that, like from a standpoint of like the art is going to transform as it goes. Like I think about landscape architects. Landscape architects design for today and for 20 years from now, kind of deal, and how the thing is going to unfold as things grow and change and bloom and die. And so, like I could almost see you thinking about, okay, this is going to be the today version, but this is going to weather, and then it's going to be a new piece in 5 years. It's just.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that when you're doing any sort of outdoor, mural work, you have to take that into consideration because, even if you do seal it, there is a chance that that will happen. And unfortunately, in cities, that, there's always a chance it can get tagged over too, you never know. So, yeah, I mean, that's definitely something I do try to keep in mind. I haven't really kept it in mind in terms of my like designing, but something to definitely consider.
Yeah, I was telling Steph before because it's stuff like it's really hard to comprehend the volume of murals that are in this city.
Oh.
It's like
I need to come visit. I've said this before. Like
Yeah.
every guest that you bring on from Philly, I'm like, I need to go over.
Yeah, they literally do mural tours. So there's so
Oh
many.
wow.
Yeah, there's so many murals. We're really lucky to have like that's what I mean. Like when I chose Philly to come here, like we have a thriving art community and the public art community is absolutely incredible in this city.
Yeah, and
Do
I
you
don't know
have to
about
get, like-
other cities, but I know that for Philadelphia, the zoning rules for, because my background in architecture, commercial buildings need to allocate a certain percentage of the build to public art. So sometimes it's sculptures integrated, sometimes it's a mural, sometimes like some footprint of a commercial building, when they put up like a new skyscraper, they have to dedicate a certain proportion to public art.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I was just gonna ask, do you need a license to, or can you just rock up at a wall? Because like here, I mean, people like do art illegally, but you normally have to have a license or something to have that piece of wall to do art on. So it's really quite fascinating actually that commercial buildings have to have a dedicated bit. That's amazing.
Yeah, it varies how they do it. So say like the Comcast Center, which was up until a couple of years ago, was the tallest building in the city, and then the other Comcast building is now the tallest. But the first one, what they did is in the lobby they have girders, because it was a 4-story lobby, big tall enclosed glass. They put like people walking on the girders, so those sculptures count as public art because they're just wandering around the girders. That's how so sometimes like they get creative with how they're going to incorporate the public art, but it's still like I love the fact that like that's a requirement that you have to deal with if you're gonna build big here.
Wow.
Yeah, it's actually sorry.
So go on.
I was just gonna say real quickly, it's actually funny that you bring up the new Comcast building because when the new Comcast building went up and they opened the Four Seasons, I was actually part of a group of artists who was commissioned to do some murals for the grand opening. And those were not permanent murals, but they were on very large pieces of plywood and they were displayed from for the grand opening event and then on for I believe a few months after that, and we have no idea where they ended up, but it's funny because like I don't know if that was like part of that commission or not. I'm not really sure how all that worked, but it was part of the opening event. So
cool. The question I was going to ask is just going back to your journey. So you've finished and graduated, you've started at this photography studio, you said, oh no, it's not enough, it's not for me, I want to pursue my own dreams. Where do you even go with that? Because obviously being an artist or being a creative of any point is notoriously difficult to make it into your full-time work or full-time kind of job. What was the first part of your journey? How did you come about with that?
yeah, so like most artists or anyone who's a creative entrepreneur, I had to figure out obviously a way to like pay my bills and all of that. I was very lucky shortly after I was put in touch with somebody who had a small startup working with other artists. Unfortunately, it's not around anymore. But I was working there kind of wearing a lot of hats because it was a startup, but I was kind of doing creative direction and project and client management, graphic design, all kinds of stuff. So I do also have a background in a little bit in working kind of in design and like marketing and all of that. So I got my minor in college. I got a minor in graphic printing science, which is essentially like similar to graphic design, but it's more kind of in the packaging and like commercial side. So
Okay.
yeah, so I have like experience and education with like the whole Adobe suite and all of that. And I came out of college with that, which I think is why I was able to get the job at the photography production company. And there I was doing like photo editing, marketing, some of that kind of stuff. And when I left there, I did end up taking a part. It was actually part-time, but it was a little more than part-time because it was a startup and I was doing all that like work there, which actually led me, especially also being a business owner who is simultaneously building my own brand as an artist. All of that kind of led me into learning and self-educating more on a deep level about creative direction, branding, marketing, design. And I had to really get deep into that because I was doing it for this other startup and then myself and working with some other artists as well, because the startup was working with other artists. So I got a lot of, experience doing that for a couple of years. And then when I left there, I ultimately actually ended up teaming up with an old colleague and starting a business, which was in branding and digital marketing. And now
Okay.
today, I also actually own my own business. So we have since, separated and dissolved that business, but I'm essentially still doing the same sort of work under my own business called Golden Vision Company. And it's a design and digital marketing studio. So I work with a bunch of my clients are small businesses, creatives, organizations, medium-sized businesses. And I, do a lot of creative work with them, ranging from, branding and design all the way to social media and marketing strategy management, all of that. So yeah, so that has been
Wow.
I will say that has been kind of what has allowed me to, continue to pursue my passions as a professional artist as well, because being an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, like being a creative entrepreneur, I mean, I have a lot of stuff going on, but it also gives me a little bit of liberty to control my own schedule and my own time so that I also have time to work on my work when needed.
Yeah. That's very cool. And you wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
Crikey, talented girl.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Sometimes
Um,
why am I doing so much?
Right.
that did sound like a lot, but
Yeah.
it's
Emily,
great that you've got talents.
I would love to go
Sorry.
back to something you had mentioned earlier, and only because like I think every creative person has gone through that journey of finding their unique voice. Because I would love to talk more because actually that's how Steph and I originally connected. It was like through TikTok because she was told like, well, you can't be doing this, like she does like surreal fantasy photography, and she had a photographer tell her, you kind of got to do like the regular basic stuff. And she was like, I don't want to, like I have no interest in that. But like she stumbled across that and I found my voice like after like just flopping around doing a bunch of stuff, saying, oh, this is how I look at things. This is how I look at the world. So I think every creative has gone through this process of saying, I know I'm good at the thing, but like, what's my lane that makes me special? So I would love to hear more about your journey through that, because I think that's something that's it's shared among everybody who's ever created.
Yeah, I think it's like it's so hard because I think that journey is unique for everyone. And I also think it's kind of a mix between where we put our focus, but also what drives us internally and what like we find interesting naturally, and then also kind of the opportunities that come our way. So I feel like there are a lot of things that are components affecting that. And I feel the same way in my business as well, like my design and marketing business. I feel like it's interesting because even there I've had to kind of work on like finding what makes me unique in a very saturated field. And it's I think for me in my artistic journey, I felt very, like I said, it took me a couple of years. I felt very stumped and stuck and kind of like almost angry about it. I was like, why can't I figure out what my style is? Like, what is my style? Because I would follow, you know, especially at that time, like social media was booming. Instagram was booming in 2015, 2016, 2017. And I feel like I was just looking at all these other amazing artists who were really taking off. And I was like, you know, I don't want to just copy what they're doing, but like I would, you know, like try to get inspired by them. But I really think that ultimately, for me, it was just diving in and not being afraid to just experiment and create, even though I felt like at that time my work was not cohesive. So like I was making a lot of like random stuff that like was me, but it also, you know, it really it was very different than the work I'm doing now. But I think that experimentation and then just not giving up and continuing to just get in the studio and create led me down the path to where I am now. You know, and like I said, I was doing that experimentation, which is what led me into finding Gold Leaf, which kind of brought me back. And I will say, because, you know, out of school, printmaking, you have to have the presses, you have to have the supply, like that is a whole thing. And I knew I probably would not pursue that after college. Like I had already known that. So I did not get like a membership at a print studio, which I could have, but I wanted to dive back into kind of my roots of drawing and painting and, you know, figure out what worked for me there. And I think really for me, that journey was just about creating, trying things out, and then finally finding something that really lit me up from inside. Yeah. I hope that answered your question. I feel like I was rambling.
No, it's
But
very
well, I mean, kind of, but I also think that if that is the shared experience, like I think that even the rambling of finding your thing, it's testing out, like I'm going to go down this path, I'm going to go down this path, I'm going to go down, and then until you find, you keep going back to something that feels right. And then, because now, like, honestly, like you're one of those artists, like if I see a piece, there's an 85% chance that I know it's yours. Like, because you have that look now, like you've figured that out.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I that makes me feel so good because it's like I think back to that and I'm like, wow, like it has been a long journey, and that journey is not linear at all. I'm sure you guys can agree and relate that it's, you know, it's a roller coaster. It's all over the place. But then when you do find that thing that, you know, utilizes your skills, lights you up and gets you excited, and that you can make money off of, that is like the trifecta right there. I know that I believe there's some sort of like Japanese concept that I don't remember the word of, that literally talks about like that's how you make the best living you can, is find what you're passionate about, find something that utilizes your skills, and find something that's like, you know, that you can make money off of. And that's
Yeah,
where
it's like I've seen that, like, and I don't know the Japanese term, but it's like if you're good at it and it utilizes your skill, but you don't make money off it, it's a hobby. If you're good at it and you can you can make money off of it, that's a job. If it utilizes your skill and then it's a career. But if you pull all three together, then it's a calling, and it's like, you know, that's what you should be doing.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I know I've seen that out there too. And I feel like that is for any creative, any entrepreneur, any artist, any business owner. I really feel like that's where that sweet spot is like, you know, finding that center of that trifecta.
And if someone was I'm just thinking about what you just said about how you found your kind of style and stuff like that. If someone was to, or if you were to describe your art to someone, how would you describe it? What is it influenced by? Like, do you paint murals of like fruit? Is it of people? Is it of scenery? What's your kind of style?
Yeah. So I do different things, but my subject matter is mostly portraits, or elements from nature. So animals, sometimes like insects, I find like butterflies, Luna moths, that kind of stuff. I also do, portraits as well. So it's kind of a combination, trees, plants, floral, combination of nature as well as portraits. And that's really where I draw a lot of my inspiration from. And I would say my work is kind of, conceptual in nature, coming from a, BFA background. They really, at least my program, really hammered in the importance of concept in work. So I consider myself kind of more of a conceptual artist. So if you're looking at any of my like paintings or drawings, they're mostly going to be in like a neutral color palette, black, white, neutral, softer neutral tones. Sometimes I'll include like small pops of color in certain pieces. It really just depends. And those pieces are usually like, it's still like more of neutral colors or colors that you're going to like find in nature. It's not vibrant. It's very soft toned. But mostly in the last few years, I've done mostly like black and white work, and my portraits are in black and white. But the pop of color really usually comes from the gold leaf. But I will sometimes incorporate silver leaf, or, like I said, Swarovski crystals, diamond dust, that kind of thing. But those are usually like translucent, not colored as well. So, so, I feel like that's it, like that's generally the gist, like the visual kind of
Sounds
representation.
very pretty and like almost, don't know. I want with the gold leaf. I was expecting to have some kind of Grecian in there for some reason. That's what conjured into my head.
Yeah.
What your clients, is it like businesses who are like, can you come and paint something awesome, or is it like individuals who want you to come to their house? Like, what kind of
Both. Yeah, both. As an artist, I am not limited to who I'm willing to take on as a client. So, I sell my work to individuals, businesses. I do, most of my murals are with businesses.
Yeah.
Or if like it's part of some sort of like mural event. Like I said, I've done a couple mural festivals where they'll get a bunch of local muralists together and give us a big wall, and then we each kind of have a section where we create our mural, and then they kind of all come together, and it's just like this beautiful long wall of murals. So yeah, I would say I'm open to any clientele in terms of my artwork.
How
very
often
cool.
are your mural commissions like, we just want this is your wall? We want an Emily Rogers mural. You do what you want. Or it's like, we would like it to be in this vein. Can you give us your take on that? Like how often is it like just free reign, and how often is it like, we would like it to be this thing, and your interpretation of that?
I would say it's usually with clients, it's more often they have an idea of what they want, and then we work collaboratively, we work together, and I'll design it, and I'll create, like a mock-up, like a sketch of it, a mock-up in Photoshop, and kind of give them a gist of what it's going to look like. And then, once they sign off on that, then we actually start the painting process. But I would say more often, I have had like a couple clients that are just like, yeah, do whatever you want. Just this is the general theme. And then I've had others who are a little bit, more involved in the process, but it goes both ways, I think, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious, like your mindset, because like one feels very much like a design process, and one like when you're just in your studio and you're just like, I need to get this out of me. This is purely my point of view. Like those feel like two different things, like two different mindsets as you're approaching it.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely is. Commissions are very different than just creating work without any sort of limitations. I'm actually right now working on a whole new collection of work myself for a solo show that I have coming up on November 3rd, in Chestnut Hill here in Philadelphia. And so right now I'm very much in the mindset of just creating from within without any sort of limitation or guidelines, because it's a solo show. So the gallery was like, you have free reign. And it is very different. I think when it comes to commissions, I almost kind of am like 50-50 mentally between like my artistic side, but then also kind of my like business owner manager side of it, because
Mhm.
I will say, like, because I do creative work with my design, branding, you know, any sort of graphic design I'm doing, that is all very creative as well. So I think like my art being an artist really lends well to that work, but I also feel like kind of the more like structured side of like my business mind lends well to my art as well, because it makes it easy for me, just like I would collaborate on a brand with like, okay, what is your business, what does your business do, how do we best project that with this visual design work that we're creating to represent you in a brand. Because you know, you have a business, a brand is not like a business and a brand are two different things. You know, your brand is what's visually and verbally representing your business. So it's kind of, I think when I'm working on commissions, I almost like think about it like that way. Like, how do we collaborate to create this piece of artwork that is representing whatever you want it to? And like I said, like my, you know, murals will be for businesses. So, you know, a lot of the time it has to kind of like relate back to the business even in a way. My most recent mural that I did earlier this year is in a coffee shop here in Roxborough, and I actually did the mural matching with their brand colors. And so, you know, the location was painted in their brand colors, and I really wanted to incorporate that into the mural so that it was like seamless.
Mhm.
And yeah, so, you know, I really feel like it's, you know, it's interesting because it goes both ways.
And do you ever find there comes a time when you're like, God, I don't know what to do. Like
Oh,
my
100%.
my brain is
I,
gone.
it's funny, I was actually gonna bring this up because you posted something on Instagram like a month or two ago, and I thought it was very vulnerable and an important conversation to have with artists that like sometimes the well feels dry and it doesn't make you not an artist. So can you go deeper into that? Because like stuff like I really wanted to hit on that because I thought that's we need to talk more about that, like in
Yeah.
public and be okay with it.
Yeah, no, I love that you brought that up. So, yeah, so for me, just talking from my personal experience, I am an artist who creates from a place of like positivity and like internal, like I'm not like a tortured artist. Like I'm not the kind of artist who's like, I mean, I'm sure I'm tortured in some ways. Like I'm sure friends,
Yeah.
family would be like, you are kind of dramatic. Like
It's not internal, it's external, you're tortured. Like it's
maybe, I don't know, but I guess like I'm just not one of those artists who is like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling really depressed, I need to go paint. When I'm feeling depressed, I'm like, give me some Taco Bell, I'm binge watching Netflix. Like, you know,
Yeah.
that's, you know, I'm like, and I put on my comfort show or like, and I like hide in my bedroom, you know, like that's more me. So when COVID hit and obviously the world just felt so on fire, and you know, we were all having so much anxiety and just everything was going on, and I'm somebody who actually, you know, suffers from just generalized anxiety, um as many people do, and that's I think
Mhm.
another conversation that people need to be more open about. But I just was not in a place, and especially because all the art shows had been canceled, we were locked up in our house, like that really was just for me, I like just could not create. So like while so many other in a ways I was very like jealous, and like I would, you know, beat myself up for it, because I was like, there are so many other artists out here who are really utilizing this time to you know, hone in on their creative practice and create. But I also had at that time had my first branding and marketing business with my old business partner, and we were trying to help keep our clients afloat, and simultaneously they were keeping us afloat. So that
Mhm.
felt like a huge undertaking in itself. So I just felt so energetically drained. I did not personally have the creative, you know, drive in me to create art. I still was doing some work, like I did a couple of murals over, you know, I would say 2020, 2021 and 2022. I did do a few murals, I did do a couple paintings. I was still doing pop-up events and shows when possible. I did multiple online exhibitions with previous work that I had. So I was still active, but I really wasn't create like that well was, like you said, John, that well internally felt very dry. I wasn't feeling super excited or driven to create that work on my own. And I really was only able to create when I had a project, like a commission project or some sort of structure around it. I
Mhm.
just wasn't feeling inspired to create my own. So I did also kind of unintentionally take a hiatus from my social media, did not post on my art account for like over a year. I didn't post, I don't know exactly how long it was, but it was over a year. And that I think is also kind of because I am a social media manager for other brands and businesses. So I get a little burnt out from the social media grind as well, because obviously I have to do it for my paying clients. And so unfortunately, I'm sure a lot of us can relate to this, like when we have to do certain things for ourselves that we're doing in our jobs or in our creative practice, or, you know, for other people, it's like when it comes to us, we kind of get put on the back burner.
Yeah,
So
professionals are their own are their own worst clients. Like
oh,
it's just,
exactly. I literally say that to my clients. I'm like, do as I say, not as I do. And, you know, because like, especially now that I'm on my own, like I don't have like a small team like I did before to help with some stuff. So, you know, so anyways, and I've never had a team with my art business. It's always just been me. So, as it is for most artists out there. So yeah, so I was off social media for a while. I was still I was still checking the account, responding to DMs, you know, posting on my stories, but I wasn't really actively posting any work. But this year it was, well, and I'll say this too. In 2020 we had the pandemic. 2021 I bought my first house with my husband, and we also got married in 2022. So it was just like 3 years in a row where there was a lot going on. And when we bought our first house, within 5 days of living there, had a major, well, we had a major plumbing leak. And then we had to replace the roof. And then there was obviously other stuff. We bought a now it's like 93, 94-year-old home. So we were doing a lot of like updates to it, that kind of stuff. So there were also like other factors that were like affecting, you know, my creative process, and the fact that I also own a whole other business.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so I just wanted to, like, I don't know, like I just felt really inspired. Like I got, like, you know, for my spiritual people out there, like some people say you get a download or you get like your intuition. I am always trusting my intuition. I'm always trusting my gut. You know, if you're into spirit guides, God, guardian angels, whatever you believe in, like if you're, you know, spiritual at all, like you know, I believe there's something out there sending me messages, and I just felt really called to just share that story and have that kind of be my first post back after taking a long unintentional hiatus. And I just hoped that it would even resonate with a couple people, but honestly I had like an insane amount of like feedback from that. It sparked a lot of conversations in the comments, and also so many people were sending me direct messages, and it was really beautiful because it then led me to, you know, connect with a lot of other people who are struggling with the same thing. And like it was very affirming, I think, for a lot of us. And so I was so like, you know, just happy and like honored to like help other people out there not feel alone, but it also helped me not feel alone in the process. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure you guys, maybe you haven't yet, and I hope you never do, but I know that like at some point it seems like all artists or creatives are going to hit a point where they kind of just need to step away for a bit.
Mhm.
I haven't posted anything for a month now, and I normally post every single week. And part of it's because I went on holiday, and then I came back, and I've had quite a lot of stuff going on. But do you know what? It's actually been quite nice not to go, oh, I need to get this done, need to get this done, because I've got a 9 to 5 as well, which I also manage the 9 social media accounts. So when you said the social media, I was like, oh, I
Yes,
so
you
get
get
that.
it. You get
And it
it.
was so nice. Like I really like social media, especially TikTok, but it was just nice having the time off and not having to constantly check and reply to inboxes and think of new content. But yeah, I definitely get like that. I had a shoot on Saturday for I did something for a charity, and I'm doing a couple of the fantasy ones, and I was working on it last night, and I was like, my brain is not braining, like this looks crap. So I was like, no, I'm gonna come back with fresh eyes tomorrow, which I have done instead. I've finished it. But yeah, I think that with any kind of creative, at some point you run a bit dry. And
Yeah.
that's okay, because like if you're an athlete, there'd be a time when you get a bit tired or you need to rest or from your training, or if you are a, I don't know, a teacher or a solicitor, whatever it might be, eventually you need a little break.
Yes.
I think as create go on,
I've gone
sorry.
through stretches and this is just something from a creative standpoint where I no longer like the work. The clients do, and that's fine. They get what they need, but I'm like, I'm not inspired by this. Like, it's just like, like now I'm just doing it just because somebody, because somebody's paying me to do it. And you just go like, I got to get out of this. Like, I got to break free and do something, different to do that. But sometimes that's hard because you're just like, like,
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
think that's such an interesting point too. And I've definitely heard other people saying that as well. And I think that that even ties back in with what we were talking about earlier about like finding, your style and like what lights you up and what gets you excited. Because like if you're doing the same thing for a really long time, like it makes sense that you would get kind of bored of it.
mhm.
And, I just had two other thoughts I wanted to share just about being an artist and a creative in general is like, just like with anything, we have to remember we're humans and that we're not made to be workhorses. Like we are not in this day and age. It's like, it's all about the hustle, the grind, like, and it's like, we are also living beings. We're human beings. It is our job to be, not do. We're not human doings, like it's
Yeah.
not. And it's like, this is something I have to constantly remind myself, being a recovering perfectionist. Um, is, it's not our job to just produce and always be perfect and always know like, okay, this is the best thing. Like it's okay if not every piece of work you make is your best piece. Like not every piece is going to be a masterpiece. Like even the greats, they probably had a lot of really horrible stuff before they had that, one or a couple incredible masterpieces, I think that's in any field too, to be honest. Like you
Yeah.
said, even with
Yeah.
sports, I think
And
the game's not going to be your best game.
well, and it's funny you talk about like what we're here to do. Like they've got, because there's always been the narrative of like, like early Homo sapiens and like hunting all day and like like they worked for like an hour a day and then the rest of it was socializing. Like that's what humans did. Like that's early humans were doing mostly like hanging around and telling stories like in their way. But like they're finding now like as human beings, the number one thing we were built to do was socialize. Like it was
Yeah.
like and connect with people.
Yeah.
This is why I find it wild. And I know some people are introverts, which is fine, some people are extroverts, which is fine. But when people are like, oh, I prefer working at home, and I'm like, I find that really tricky to get my head around, because I get it as in childcare is easier, not having to do the commute, amazing. But in general, like, don't you, like, I crave that connection with people. Like I like being around people. So yeah,
I think it's a scale. Like I think for introverts, like they're actually drained by it, but they want one-on-one connection. So like when you go into an office and there's 100 people in there, that's exhausting. But if you go have a coffee meeting with one colleague and you talk about something like that is a different scenario. So I think it's much more about the pendulum where it is. Like there's not one good over the other, but like
yeah,
because I'm the same way
like
when I worked in corporate, I had the opportunity to do some work from home, and I'm like, I can't focus when I'm doing that. And now that I'm full time and I work from home, I'm still struggling with that. And COVID like really messed me up because then I couldn't go out and do anything. So like just getting those bearings of like getting that energy and connecting with people, like I have to be deliberate about it now because I can't just walk into an office, go into the conference room onto the whiteboard and say, all right, team, we're going to create something today. And I think that but I think that it's that continuum that people are on. You gotta know yourself, I guess.
That's so
yeah.
funny too, because I'm the opposite of you guys. So, and I think this like is really depends on like like if you're an extrovert or an introvert. And this is something that I find so fascinating because my whole life I thought I was an extrovert, and I've had so many people tell me I was an extrovert because I do love people and I do love talking with people. Like I'm a talker. I can talk your ear off all day. Like you've probably noticed. And but I learned maybe only a year or two ago that the difference between extroverts and introverts is not how friendly you are or how much you can talk. It's actually about how you get refueled. So are you feeling more energized and fueled by being out with a bunch of people, or is that draining to you? So for me, I actually think, and I just found this out when I learned this, was I actually think I'm an introvert because I work so much better from home by myself. But I love having those meetings, like you said, those one-on-one meetings with my clients, or like, like Zoom, even like smaller things like this, like Zoom meetings, anything that's kind of like smaller. But I can absolutely go out to an event and like crush it. But you best believe I'm looking forward to getting home. And because although it energizes me and excites me, it drains me. And when I get home, I'm like so tired. And I can be out and like loving the event, because I love, like, as an artist, I love going to art shows, absolutely love the energy, the environment, like, and there's usually, especially here in Philly with our First Fridays, like there's hundreds of people out, at these events. And I love that, but I also feel like so much more focused, and I feel like I can just get work done so much better when I'm home alone by myself. And so it's just such an interesting conversation, because there's so many, like you said, there's a scale and there's so many different ways that people prefer it. And like, I'm a work from home, stay at home kind of girl. And yeah, it's just wild. It's just crazy.
Yeah. My sister's the same with regards to, she feels like, she's like, oh, my battery's used up now, I've had enough peopling. Whereas I can literally be in a really bad mood and then I'll meet up with some friends or I'll go out and I'll feel so much better being around people. And that's not to say either that I don't like my own space or coming home or anything like that, because it's your own space, right? But yeah, for me, I do feel energized. However, working, I thought it was interesting when you said working, I do get more done at home because I chat. When if I go into an office, I'm like, la, 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 la.
Yeah.
But see, but it also depends on your type of work. So like the joke about me in corporate world was I would wander around the office and chat with everybody, and like to the point where people would get annoyed with it. But like what would happen is I knew about everything that was going on and incorporated it all together eventually. Like it was just I needed that process in order to bring everything together into a single narrative, because that I wasn't going to sit in a meeting and go through an agenda. We're going to figure this out. I'm going to pop by your desk, and then I get an idea, and I'm going to pop by their desk, and then by the end of the week, I have the whole thing done. But the walking around and chatting, it was my process. That was my creative process, was figuring it out. Like, but it's just
you might be a verbal processor.
I definitely am. I am definitely somebody who, like, I remember one of my coworkers was joking because I said, let me bounce something off you, and I just started rambling, and she just said, quick question, do you need me to respond, or do you just need a person here? Like, is that, and I'm like, I honestly, it's the latter. I literally just need a presence here so that I can talk through this. And that was really like, I was not looking for input. I was looking for an audience that I could work it out,
I'm the same way. That's something, like, I think a lot of people don't realize is some of us just need to be able to talk through it. And then as we do, like, things are getting sorted out in our brains. And then it's like, okay, thanks for listening. Like, I got it now, I solved my own problem. But, it is funny because, yeah, like, I think, this is something that's like fascinated me the last few years, is just the way we are all so different. And, we have different personality traits and like ways of processing, functioning, thinking, like just everything. Like, it's like, we're just all so unique and so different. And, yeah, I think this is something too with like society as a whole is becoming more aware of. So I wouldn't be surprised if, in coming years, like people start having more conversations about this kind of stuff.
I don't know if you guys knew this. I only learned recently, or if I was late to the game, that not everybody has an internal monologue.
Yeah.
Like I was like, what? Wait, what?
I have one. Do you guys both have one?
Yeah, I have an entire like I have full conversations going on like all the time.
Yeah.
I think
it's rare to not have one, actually. Like, most people do have one.
But there's people who only think in imagery. They don't think in terms of words. They don't think of, and they don't hear a voice. Like I actually hear like my own voice thinking when I think in terms of verbal, like it's just, yeah.
Mine will have like a rational, like, yeah, but what if you did it like this? And then the same me in my head will go, yeah, but blah blah blah. If you did that way, I'm like, yeah, that's a good point actually. Like having a full like there's not two. I'm not crazy. But
Yeah.
like back and forth in your head, like, should I? And then I think it was on TikTok or YouTube or something, and they were like, oh yeah, so like if I go to the shop and I want to get I know some shopping, I'd go bread, but I don't say bread in my mind. I just like picture it, and I was like, what?
Yeah, they just picture bread.
What?
It's funny, like I can have full on, and because it's probably because of my ADHD too, like if I'm going into a meeting, I can run through the scenarios of how I think the meeting is going to unfold, like responses,
yeah.
like conversation. So I'll go through a million different scenarios so that I have like responses for any question that I think might ever come up. And it's just, but my brain, I don't try to do it. It's just, that's where my brain goes. It's just like,
I do
you know,
the same thing. I do the same, and it drives my husband nuts because I'll be talking to him. I'll be like, well, what if it goes this way? What if it goes this way? And he's like, you can't like predict the future. I'm like, I gotta be prepared. Okay, I gotta be prepared.
Yeah.
well,
Maybe
it's funny, like my
thing. I don't know.
my mom told me once that hers, like when hers is so bad that she's like, I have literally had full on conversations and then forgot to tell your father. Like she's like, I just assumed that we had the conversation because like I just had it in my. She's like, and then, like I've asked him like, why don't you remember this? And then she's like, oh, and then he goes, you didn't tell me anything about this. And then she realizes she's like, I never verbalized it out loud to him. I just thought about it before, and then I was going to talk to him about it later. Like, but she said
That's
sometimes
funny.
it feels so real that it's just like I forgot, you know.
That is so funny. Yeah. Maybe that is an ADHD thing. I'm not really sure. Cause like I have that as well. And like maybe it's like a combination of ADHD and being a verbal processor. Like maybe that's the perfect storm of just needing to run through scenarios.
Well, I think
But
I think it also
also
might be. I think it might
anxiety.
be anxiety because isn't
Yeah,
anxiety
yeah.
the fear of the unknown? So if you go through all the scenarios, then all the unknown becomes at least known to some extent. Like I think it just might be general anxiety.
You know, maybe
Yeah,
it's
mine is
like a
definitely anxiety.
trifecta. Yeah, it's a trifecta: ADHD, verbal processing, and anxiety. It's like, there you go. You're gonna have to
Yeah.
you're gonna have these like I don't know about you, but anytime like I've even been like mad at someone, I'll have an argument in my head with that person, but they're not there, and I'll be like, and that's
Or
what I've had to work on not doing because I'm like, that just wastes brain space and energy. Like I can't.
I've even done it where you've had an argument with someone, and then later on you think and you're replaying and you're like, I should have said this. God damn
Oh, hate when that happens.
it.
Hate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, I think now's a good time to wrap it up. We normally try and keep it to an hour.
Yeah, Emily's like
Better at.
where can people find you? Socials.
Yeah.
I want to talk about like, you know, let's get the details on your show because I want to get as many people who are local to this area out to go see it because I think that it's fantastic. So yeah, give us the details or how people can keep in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. On social media, I'm emilytaylor.artist. Emily Taylor Artist is my website. You can find it all on my social, but you'll find me there. Primarily Instagram, also on TikTok and Facebook, Twitter too, but don't really nurture that as much.
Yeah.
Especially these days. Yeah, so that's where you can find me. My upcoming solo show is at No Name Gallery in Chestnut Hill on November 3rd is the opening. It's going to be up all month, but the opening is for First Friday at 5 p.m. I believe it goes until 8 p.m., maybe 9. I don't remember exactly what the cutoff is, but starts at 5, goes till 8 or 9. And I'll definitely be posting about that on my social now that I've kind of come back from my hiatus. So you can find out more information there.
Very cool. Well, I hope it goes really well. I'm sure it will.
Thank you.
How
Wish you could be there.
I would
Yeah,
literally
you'll have to make the trip eventually, right?
I know, right?
Philly is such an amazing place to visit. There is no, like, there's just, you're not going to run out of cool things to do, see, eat, drink. Like, Philly's amazing. Yeah.
But I've only ever been to like 2 places in America, which is Florida and New Mexico. So I'd like to go somewhere else. Although my only idea of Philadelphia is that the actual film Philadelphia. That's my my only like understanding of it.
I've never seen that.
It's quite an old film now, I think. It came out when I was a kid.
Yeah, it's that was Tom Hanks and
Tom
It's
Hanks,
a-
yeah. It's quite a
yeah.
depressing film, actually. It's a great film, but it's quite depressing.
yeah, it's like that was like early 90s, I think.
Yeah.
It was very much a commentary on the AIDS epidemic, which was a lot of like the late 80s. So I think it was like an early 90s thing.
Well, I'll
Yeah.
have to see that. It's funny that you didn't. I was expecting you to say Rocky because I feel like everyone always says Rocky.
Oh yeah, and Rocky. How did I miss that?
And that,
Yeah,
I mean,
and
but that's an old film too, although
Yes.
some neighborhoods that he's running through look exactly like it did then, yeah. Like the Italian
Do you
market
guys-
hasn't changed much.
Do you guys live near the steps? The famous running steps that he runs up?
I used to live not far. I mean, it was a drive. Like I couldn't walk there. So, but I lived in Manayunk for a while, like a long time actually. Before I bought my house, I lived there for like 7 years. So it wasn't super far, but it was a drive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had an apartment that was a couple blocks from there. Now it's like it's in this corner of the city, and I live down in this corner of the city. And in Philadelphia, it's easy to go up and down or left to right, but going diagonal, it's like a pain in the ass. So I rarely go diagonal. Like it's just
Oh, okay.
you know,
Oh yeah,
Everything
because
is
it's out in
gridded.
grids.
yeah, everything's
Yeah.
on a grid. So it's like, yeah,
Because I just
you gotta-
recently learned that what a block is, because you hear it on movies, and I've always gone like, what? Like, is a block like they go, oh yeah, it's just down the block. I'm like, is that a measurement, or how does it work? Like, I didn't understand.
Yeah, because
So
you
I
guys
said
just
last
have
week.
like meandering paths that they decided to pave at some point. Like it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's
I will
Yeah, so we don't
say,
say that
I-
over here.
Yeah, I will say I've never been to the UK, but when I did visit Europe, I was in Italy and in Paris, and I was so confused where we were because there was no like direction. And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know where we started. I don't know where we are now. Like, thank God for Google Maps. I'll just say that.
Yeah. I'm diabolical with directions, like terrible. Like if there's like a dyslexia for directions, I have it. I don't know if it's a thing, but I'm terrible with it. So yeah, but we don't have the grids, and we don't have like blocks. We don't say blocks. So
well,
I was
our
always intrigued
grid.
because I've always heard it, but I didn't really know what it was.
The funny thing is, so the Philadelphia grid is unique in that each is a square. It's a 1/10 of a mile, 10th of a mile, 10th of a mile, 10th of a mile. Each square, the original grid was planned that each landowner would get a square and do an English, like a house and an English garden, and you had your square. And then immediately as industry started and people started to sell and subdivide for the workers at the port, and that's when you start to see the row homes pop in. But originally you were supposed to have your own little country, your English country estate in the middle of the city. That's why the grids was the way it was. And then immediately people started to just sell off divisions of it and build smaller houses so that they could work at the river. And that's kind of how we have the city we have today.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I did not know.
I didn't know
So,
that either. Learn
Oh,
something.
okay.
Yeah, I had to take a class on history of Philadelphia architecture. Yeah, at one point. So
And that's how you know.
I had to go through the whole thing.
A nice little nugget. See, that's one thing that's super cool too, is like there's an abundance of history here. Not like your history, but there is interesting,
It's old for the US,
it's
like,
old for the US.
it's
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
Yeah. Compared to Michigan, where I'm like, I don't feel like our history is that exciting. Yeah.
Now, Emily, you may know, like my favorite fun fact of Philadelphia, and like I always tell people this one, and you may know it from an art standpoint, that there are 3 generations of sculptors in a line in Philadelphia.
Oh no, I
So-
didn't know.
So the grandfather did William Penn atop City Hall. The son did the fountain at Logan's Circle, and
Oh.
the grandson has a mobile in the atrium of the art museum. So 3 generations of sculptors
Oh, I love that. That's
connect
amazing.
connect down that boulevard. And I always
Oh,
thought like,
that's-
that's
Yeah, I'm telling you, that's why I moved here. Philly has such an abundant, rich, creative art community.
Maybe I just need to go there. Like you could immigrate over.
yeah. I mean, you could if you want to come here and spend a couple days here, like, and you could do a 2-hour bus ride if you want to go see New York and just go go, it's just a 2-hour bus ride.
Yeah, I will say that was always like, that was a huge factor for me too. I was like, it's close to New York, and I have done art shows in New York. I love going to day trips up to shows up there. Like, that's one of the nicest things about Philly, is its proximity to New York is great. I mean, I even know people who live in the city who commute like 3 or 4 days a week because they work in New York, but they live in Philadelphia. So it's so close.
I would love to do New York, but I'd love to do New York at Christmas. It's my birthday in December, and I did look at going to New York, but it's horrifically expensive in December. Like it like triples the price. I'm like,
Yeah.
so maybe not, but I'd
I
like
would
to do it at some
say-
point.
I would also just say, based on like the weather and like how cold it gets too, like time of year, your best bet is going to be spring or
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, I don't mind the snow, but like how
It's
cold
just
is it
getting
cold?
around New York in the snow is so hard. It's like,
Okay.
yeah, it's like because it's like, I mean, driving in New York is already hard, and walking in New York is fine when it's not like bad weather. But if it's bad weather, you don't want to walk, and then everyone's trying to be on the street, and then you can't get anywhere. You're stuck in traffic jams.
Okay.
And,
That's a bit
and,
like
and it
London.
becomes, and it's just like, and it happens here too. It's like, I don't know, about an hour before the snow becomes brown and slushy, and now you're just walking in slush piles. Cause
It's
like,
rough.
because of the cars, the people walking just heated up, but then it can't disperse. So then it's just like, you're just walking in wet. And
I would say like New York seems really idyllic, I guess, based especially on how movies portray it around the holidays.
Yeah.
But like my sister-in-law lives in Brooklyn and works in Manhattan, and I know that, and we have friends who live there too who have said, like, it's not always as dreamy in the winter as you think it would be.
Yeah, I
Just be
understand that.
forewarned. I mean, I don't want to discourage you, but also just be aware. It might be a little slushy, certain areas of the city are not going to be as pretty as like Rockefeller Center, where like the tree is and stuff. So
Yeah. It sounds actually a lot like London. When London
probably,
gets snow, it's a bloody nightmare.
yeah, yeah.
It's
I
a bit
think
of a nightmare to get around anyway, let alone when it snows.
yeah, I feel like honestly, it probably is quite similar.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Cool.
Emily, thank you for
Well,
taking the time. EmilyTaylor.artist is her social. November 3rd, solo show at No Name Gallery in Chestnut Hill. So make sure you check that out. We really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Thank you. And I'm going to go and give you a follow right now.
Awesome.
I'm
Yes,
actually
and I'll follow
curious.
you back.